Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. Welcome back to the channel, modelers. Today we're going to do something that I'm really quite excited about trying. Now, it's going to be a little bit difficult to do, but I think if this works, it could be quite a good little technique to use. The idea I want to try and show you today, and actually want to try myself just to see if I can make it work, is actually something that Ben Andrust from the US team showed me, and it should work. He does it, and I'll explain it in a minute, but he does it with a slightly larger scale, and this is to be used on a quarter scale RC model. I'm going to use it on a much smaller scale, and I'm not sure it'll work because I'm working at such a small scale, but the principle is exactly the same, and I thank you, Ben, for the idea. It's worth trying. So let me explain it. What I've done is I've taken my 3 view and I've extrapolated the rudder, the elevator and the tip of the wing. And what I've done from that, I've then transferred those shapes to some plywood parts. This is just cheap 6mm ply. And these are going to be used as a former. What Ben's technique is, and he did say to me that he didn't invent it. So what he did is he took some silicon tubing, conventional 6mm silicon tubing, which I was just trying to find some lying around here and I can't, I don't use it very much. And he uses a process where he wets out some carbon tows and he then draws them with a fishing line or something like that through some silicon tubing, and then he shapes the tubing around a former and he tapes it to it and then lets it set. And once it's set, you peel the silicon tubing off. You either slide it off if it'll come off, or you just cut it and throw it away, but you peel it off and you end up with perfectly shaped carbon rods to a wingtip or an outline of a fin or a rudder or whatever. I'm going to try and do it at a scale of a 1mm rod. So this is silicon tubing, and its outside diameter is 2mm and its inside diameter is 1mm. I've also got some that is a 2mm outside and a 0.5mm inside, but I think that's just going to be a little bit too fine. I've ordered some 3mm with 1.5 internal, but I think that's actually going to be too big. So I think this will be perfect if we can make it work. But the 1.5 is worth trying when it arrives. It'll arrive tomorrow. So what I need to do is I need to cut a length of tubing that's the size, I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger, the size around all my objects that I want to make these pieces for. And then I'll cut them to length, and because that's an elevator, no, that's a rudder, so we only need one of those, so we're all right with that. This piece is an elevator, so we need 2 of these. This is just to get the length at the moment, and I'll make it about 1/4 of an inch too long. Now I need 2 of them, so that's the elevator pieces. And then we got the wingtip, which again, we'll need 2 of these. Just double check that I got that length right. Now, according to Ben, this is an extremely messy exercise. So we will be wearing gloves, and we'll see if we can limit the mess. Though, I dare say, it's going to get very messy. Okay, so that's our parts sort of count ready to go. So let's find some carbon tow. I think this one is from Nick Reeves, but I couldn't swear by that. What we need to do is see how many of these we can get down these tubes and see how we're going to do it. And I have no idea how you find the end. I assume that's an end. So what I need to do is try and figure out how much of this I could get through a 1mm tube. So I think I need something very thin. So I think I'm going to go for guitar strings. So we have an assortment of the guitar strings. Right, so let's see first of all if we can get a guitar string down a section of this. Shouldn't be too big a problem. And indeed we can. So the next thing to do is we'll put a kink in it, quite a sharp kink, like that. And then we'll take, I'm going to take half. Yeah, I think half will be fine. So we'll go for the length that we need, which is about that much. And actually I've not done that right, because what I need is this length needs to be probably double the thickness. Okay, well let's just see if it works. So that's half of the thickness of that, so half the strands. And I'll put it through the loop at the end, the little hook, or the bend, whatever you want to call it, and I'll slide the tube back, and I'll slide the hook back into the tube so that it's trapped. And then I'll try pulling the piano string through, and we'll see if we can actually pull that much through. It's trying to go. It started to go, and it is going, but it's really struggling. No, that's too tight. Something's just not letting it flow. Let's try again. No, it won't go. So let's pull the silicone tubing back off. Actually, that split it. So this was worth doing, just so that we could get an idea of whether this is going to work or not. Okay, so half is too much. So what we probably need to do is go for quarter. Let's keep this piece of tubing here. We're going to have to make another one anyway, as a test piece. And we'll pull that back through and just clean up the end. Just cut the end because it'll become a bit frayed. So we'll pass that back through again. It was nearly working. So we go back to our strands, and we'll go for a few less. I still think that's too much. So it's going to be quite difficult to actually figure out how much we do need. Right, let's try that. Oops. It's quite difficult. I was hoping this stuff would be just individual strands, but actually it's not quite so straightforward as that. It's more like a fibre. Right, so that's, as you can see, quite small bundle. That looks about right though, and it's drawing through okay. We get it through the other end, you pull the hook off, and it has to be twice the length that we need. Now what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and wet out the carbon toes in this container. So I'm going to thread the guitar string through the silicone, and then I'm going to hook to this to this carbon toe that is impregnated with epoxy resin, and then I'm going to pull it through this. We need to make sure that we're not actually going to stick to the former, so I'm going to put some tape around the edge of these. I'm just going to use normal parcel tape. There we go, Doesn't look very pretty, but will work just fine. It's just to stop the epoxy sticking should it get on there. I'm hoping it won't get that messy, but I fear, watching Ben's video, it will get this messy. So we've got the pieces of silicone tube that go with each piece. I probably should just try one and just see if it works. Trying to do all these at once is probably going to be something of a disaster. So why don't we start with the rudder? We'll try and make this one work, and if it doesn't, we'll try something else. Now I better get some epoxy ready for that. I think that's probably a good idea. I'm going to use West Systems epoxy. So I've got some 105 and some 206 hardener, and it's a 5-to-1 mix. So we have a mixing pot, put that on there, zero it, and it's 5-to-1. So we want to put, let's see how much of this in. Right, that's 10 grams exactly. So we'll put 2 in this, 2 of this, there we go, 2 grams of that. We'll give this a good stir. That's way more than we need. I'm going to hold the silicone tube against the former with just masking tape. It should be enough, I think. Right, that should be enough. Okay, gloves, I think. Now this could be very messy. Make sure you protect your watch when you're doing stuff like this. The number of watches I've ruined with blobs of epoxy. I'm going to use a Jenny brush, which is one of these little foam brushes. It's got a nylon plate inside there to give it some rigidity. And that's what we're going to use. Masking tape to try and hold it around the edge of the frame. Now whether I want to have some pieces ready, probably not a bad idea. And where we're putting 2 onto 1, it could get really messy. Reintroduce a new level of messy. And then basically we just wet this out. And there we go, that's that wetted. You were right, Ben. Very messy game. And I've got epoxy all over me already. Thread the loop of the guitar string through the silicone. And then we draw it through the silicone tube. Now what it did there was it actually tried to puncture the side. Now it is drawing through, and the excess resin is just coming off the end and onto my hand. Right, that's it pulled through, so we can take the loop off. There we have it all pulled through. Now I just have to lay it on the outside of this former. There, that wasn't so bad, was it? But that's only putting one on there. And my hands are filthy. Right, so we're going to put this down somewhere. Put it on the edge of there. That's one done. The next one I'll do is the elevator. And this is a double-stranded job. Now I think we probably could have had more strands in there, because once it's wetted out, it seems to compress better and it slides through the tube better. I wonder whether I'd be better off just pouring that in there. Having some bits of tape ready was a very good idea. It's very difficult to tear tape. Tear masking tape when you're wearing gloves. It does like to stick to the gloves. That'll do, I think. Right, so now we should have two pieces of tube. There's one, there's the other. And then we have two strands. And I'm just going to pull it through silicone tube. Undo the hook. I'm going to just leave that like that for now and get the second one threaded through, ready to go. Now Ben, if you're watching, if I'm doing anything wrong, give me a shout. There we go. So now we need to lay those two pieces side by side and tape them to the former. Now I think probably what I would have been better doing is doing much longer pieces. The very start of the cord, as it goes into the pipe, the first bit that goes all the way through from one end to the other, is actually squeezed or squeegeed so that it's empty of resin. So the first inch is not really going to be very resin impregnated, I think. So that might be a problem. But we'll keep going. If this doesn't work, we can always try again. But there you go. You see we've taped the two side by side on the former. And this was one of the reasons why I made the former 6mm thick, because the silicone tube is 2mm thick, so two pieces of it fits in there nicely, so you can do two at once, save a bit of time. It seems to be going through okay. And it snapped. But fortunately, it snapped just as it went through. Right, so we need to lay these two together. On this former. The conventional way of doing this is to laminate balsa, but it's too good an opportunity to try a new technique to be missed. And there we go. Whether that's going to work, we don't really know. We'll adjourn again tomorrow morning in the workshop, and we'll see. Till then, night night. Well, the witness pot says it's good and solid. So we'll start with the rudder, see how this has gone. So I had a quick conversation with Ben last night via chat, and he adds another layer to his process, and that is that he fills the silicon tube with resin before he drags the carbon toe through. Now I'm not sure how I can do that because this is just so fine, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Air pockets in the tubing, which is why he fills it with resin before pulling it through. But it's food for thought. I've also gone for some. I bought some finer carbon toe. Well, that's interesting. It's not rigid through there. It's rotating, and I can see through there that the resin is not on the inside of the tube. So that's possibly not going to work. We'll open it up and have a look. As I said, we were pushing the technique a little bit hard by by trying to do this at such a thin scale. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the tubing, circular manner like that, and just see if I can slide it off. You can quite easily slide it off. Well, that bit's worked, but you've got to be careful when you do this. You don't want to do anything to the carbon underneath. You don't want to nick it. Sliding off, and it is solid. It slides off easily. So there doesn't seem to be a great deal of epoxy resin just there. See if we can slide that whole section off in one go. There. Now it's lumpy. As you drag your finger along it, you can feel it's fairly lumpy. I'm not sure that would work. Depends on the supporting structure, I suppose. So that's the two elevator ones. They seem a little bit more robust. Yeah, that's perfectly smooth all the way along the rod. You would think it was, machine made. And that is an elevator, and as you can see from that shot there is some supporting tubing. So you never know, it might work. But all is not lost, because I think you'll see that the technique should work. And as long as you don't make it too small and too thin, as I've done here, this is just a bit too small, I think. I think it's just too fine. Just too fine. Whether the elevator would work, again, might just be too fine. So I think the idea is good. And thanks, Ben. It was enjoyable time making those. So the idea is good, but I think the execution just needed a little bit more tweaking. In that we'll go to the 1.5mm tubing instead of this one, and we'll wait for the 1K carbon toe to come in, which means I can make it a little bit more consistent on the thickness. Anyway, I think you'll agree it's an interesting process. Ben has had great success with normal fuel tubing type size silicon, so it does work. It's just a case of tweaking until you get it right. Whether you ignore this and go off and laminate wood just to get it done, that's up to you. But this way, it definitely has value. I had some 3mm outside and 1.5mm internal silicon tube arrive this morning, so I thought, just as a quick follow-up, I'll try and make another rudder, just the rudder, and we'll see how it goes. I'm still waiting for the 1K carbon toes to arrive. They haven't yet, so I'm just going to sort of roughly guess how much of the existing toe, and we'll just try that. I'm just going to measure out 5 grams, sorry, of resin. We'll use the tray again. It's a bit solid, but it's a bit crusty, but it doesn't really matter. And we'll find our guitar string. We'll thread it through this larger diameter tubing. Put a bend in the end. This is all the same as what we did yesterday. The only difference being that we'll use more carbon toe. Wet it out. So that's the same as we did last time. Let's see how this goes. And there's no way there's enough toe in that. So I'm going to increase the amount by quite a bit. I could see as I pulled it into the silicon tubing that there was no way that that was going to fill the tube. Right, let's see if that does us any better. Right, that's a bit better. Still could be a little bit thicker. So I think I'm really looking forward to this 1K carbon toe arriving. So I think that might be the solution. But that's filling quite well now, and the big blob of resin that's being squeezed out is also flowing into the next section, so that's working quite well. And in fact, that's filled the tube completely from one end to the other, which is ideal. So we've actually got too much length there now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the excess. Both ends. Just trying to squeeze some of the resin further along because there is a bit of a gap along there. And that's upset things a bit. Me squeezing it along like that actually pulled it away from that end, so we need to reposition it. Right, there we go. I think it's probably going to work. So so we'll see in the morning. Good morning. We're back in the workshop. Let's see how this turned out. So witness pot, solid. Oh, I can reuse that now. Let's see how we got on with this. Well, it already feels certainly more rigid. So no, I think we need to cut it halfway. I was just trying to salvage the tube, but I think I've got to just be resigned to. Just going to slide it down. There we go, that's come off. Much more rigid than the other piece. But there again, it's 1/2 mil thicker. Get that bit off. And that bit off. So if you just do it in shorter length, it's fine. Now that's nice and rigid, and it's true, it's straight. A tiny little kink in it there. I doubt you can see it, but it's just a little bit rough on the outside edge of that. And a little bit rough just in there. And it's just where air's in the tubing. But most of it is really nice, it's really good. I think that is the basis for our rudder. So this 1.5 mil tubing is definitely the way to go, but we need to we need to get the number of carbon toes just right, and we haven't yet. So I'm not going to do any more on this until we get the 1K carbon toe that I've ordered. When that arrives, I think we'll find that maybe 1 or 2 strands, or one length doubled over fed through, is going to be perfect. But I think it's going to be more consistent then. And the areas where the carbon toe filled the tube are nice and solid. The areas where the air got in is because there wasn't enough carbon toe, I'm sure of it. So I don't think we need to do what Ben did, and that's pre-fill the tube. It's more a case of getting more carbon toe in. I think that's probably usable, and I might go ahead and try and make a rudder and a fin to try out a few ideas of how the process might work, and how I'm going to achieve it. If you've enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.